Hello students, welcome back to the biology class. So in the last class we continued the 13th chapter and that is the organisms and population, and we discussed about the second type of interpopulation interactions, and that is competition. We learned in the last class that Darwin spoke about the struggle of existence, and Darwin talked about the survival of the fittest in nature because he was already convinced with the concept that there is interspecific competition, which is an important tool or force behind the organic evolution. And we also learned in the last class that competition is believed generally that competition occurs when the resources are limited, and we learned that the competition occurs between closely related species. But in the last class we learned examples where there is competition even possible among completely unrelated species, and even competition is possible when the resources are unlimited. We discussed about the example of some shallow South American lakes where visiting flamingos and resident fishes, they compete for the common food, and that common food is the zooplanktons in the lake. We also learned that there is something called as the interference competition, and we learned that whenever there is resources unlimited, even then competition is possible because of the presence of inhibitory presence of an organism which is considered as a interference competitive organism. We learned that in the interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species is reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of other species, even if the resources, that means food and space, are abundant. Therefore, we learned a new type of competition definition, and that is the process in which the fitness of one species is significantly reduced in the presence of another species. And when we say the fitness, we mean to say the R value, which is the intrinsic rate of increase. We also learned that when we talk about laboratory experiment, it is very easy to demonstrate competition occurring in nature. And we can even find that whenever there is a strong species competing with the weaker species, then in a closed confined areas like in the laboratory experiments, it is very easy to always conclude that this superior species will slowly lead to the elimination or extinction of the weaker species. Gauss and his experimental ecologist, the colleagues and all, they found similar type of responses. They found when resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species, but there are evidences of opposite type also. We learned one example, and that is the Abingdon tortoise. Abingdon tortoise was found in Galapagos Island, and when human introduced goat on those islands, then because goat walks faster and its browsing efficiency is more, so the pattern slowly developed in such a manner that the Galapagos Island faced extinction of all the Abingdon tortoise because of the greater browsing efficiency of goat. We learned a concept of competitive release, according to which a species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when competing species is experimentally removed. And we learned in support the example of Connell's elegant field experiment. This experiment was conducted in the rocky sea coast of Scotland, and in this experiment there were two barnacles which are crustaceans and arthropods. There were two barnacles, the stronger or the larger one Belanus, which dominated the intertidal area, and the smaller barnacle is the Cathamelus, and it was found that the dominating one, the Belanus, was able to exclude the smaller one from that intertidal area or the zone of the rocky sea coast of Scotland. And we also learned that herbivores and plants, they face more stiff competition when compared to the carnivores. We learned about the competitive exclusion principle in the last class, which was stated by Gauss. So the Gauss competitive exclusion principle states that the two closely related species competing for the same resources cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be slowly but eventually eliminated. This may be true if resources are limited, but it has been found that there are organisms which do not undergo extinction. They try to coexist, and this coexistence happen in the case whenever there is unlimited resources. So it has been found that there are examples. For example, MacArthur found that there are 5 closely related species of warblers which were living on the same tree, and they were able to avoid competition, and they were able to coexist on the same tree because they learned the pattern of resource partitioning. Resource partitioning stands for that they started delineating that how much area they should cover, which branch they should feed on, which branch the other should feed on, what type of fruit size or the insect size they should feed on. So because of all these things, that means the behavior differences in their foraging activities, the 5 different closely related species of warblers were able to coexist on the same tree, and this is called as resource partitioning.